I'm going to start off, first of all, welcoming George and Linda, because we're so delighted that you both are here to be our guest speakers and help with the school. It's just delightful to have you here.
Thank you, guys.
And to welcome all of you again, as we did last night. But just, I know when I got home, I was really filled with gratitude, just thinking again of you coming from all over the world here to this little island where a miracle happened 40 years ago. And I say that deliberately because what happened here was the most unusual occurrence to a very ordinary man, but such an extraordinary experience, a profound insight that Sydney Banks had that has brought you all here time and time again from all over the world. And it's amazing that it happened in the first place because it just has the power to draw people. The spiritual energy behind life that Sid uncovered and talked about as the secret to life, that he had discovered the secret to life, has that power to draw people and wake people up and with simplicity and with love. And when I was thinking about that last night, I thought, you know, we live such a simple life here on the island, and we get to travel now and then and go to other places, other venues in the world, and meet incredible people and see incredible results happening wherever we go. And it doesn't matter who we talk to, whether it's old, well, I shouldn't say old. How can I rephrase this? Jane, help me. Familiar faces. or whether it's people who have just, this is their first time. But when that feeling starts to come out from all of us, it opens the door to learning, this kind of silent learning behind the scenes. And even if you don't understand, I mean, nobody really understands the principles per se. You know, you can't with your intellect, but you can feel the feeling. And the feeling isn't just about feeling good or feeling positive. It's far beyond that. It supersedes that. It's our true nature expressing itself. And we may start the ball rolling and you know, go home as best as we can when we're here to talk with you all. But then you all contribute, and your true nature joins, and we live in this feeling for a while together, and that invisible learning goes on. And that's how we learned with Sid, because I saw a man change from someone who had insecurity in his life, who had some problems with his marriage, as did Ken and I, and who wondered what life had to offer. And so we got along very well with Sydney Banks because that's how Ken and I felt about life. We felt hard done to. We talked a lot about, ain't it awful? And then all of a sudden, you know, Sid had this profound enlightenment, and the world was no longer awful to him. And I must say, it was rather unnerving, to say the least. It was unnerving. And my intellect couldn't grasp it, nor could Ken's intellect grasp it, because he basically said to us, I've discovered the secret to life. I know what God is. And these three principles have the power to change the fields of psychology and psychiatry. And we'll travel the world and share this message of hope and transformation with the world. Well, I wasn't as silent as you all are. I wasn't as attentive as you all are. I, uh, I, I didn't know what to do with that statement. it just was so beyond my comprehension. And so for quite a while, I tried my best to ignore it. But the fact was that the change in Sid, in his personality, in the way he talked, and in his presence, the feeling of his presence, in his certainty, I couldn't deny it. You know, my intellect could quibble about what he was saying intellectually, but I couldn't deny the feeling of the man. That was undeniable. I couldn't deny the results. And so there was that. There was the results, and there was the feeling. So if he didn't talk to me about what he'd uncovered, and if he didn't talk to me about God, then I could feel safe and comfortable in his presence. But when he tried to share with me what he'd uncovered, I became increasingly disturbed by his words. I didn't know at the time that it was my true nature awakening. And so it would be like a bear hibernating. And the bear was a little grumpy. And so that's where I was. I became increasingly grumpy as Sid would try to share this. And finally, I said to him, Ken and I would love to have you come for dinner on the condition that you don't talk about this. And because we liked to be around him, there was something about the simple joy he lived in, that everything looked so good to him. It was the best bowl of soup. It was the most beautiful day he'd ever had. He just bought a pair of shoes that were the best shoes he ever had. And he never was like that before. Like, that's what I mean when I say his personality completely changed. He might buy a pair of shoes and he might complain at the cost. And now it was like this pair of shoes was incredible. They fit the best they'd ever fit, and it was a bargain to boot, even though they might have been pricey in my mind. So there was this complete personality change. And I just couldn't grasp that. So if he didn't talk about it, the feeling of him, his presence, was comforting. And I also didn't realize that it was my own feeling that was comforting as well. I attributed to Sid for many, many years that it was his feeling that was comforting. I didn't understand that my true nature was rising to meet the feeling of his true nature. And that's what allowed me to learn kind of invisibly. Even though my intellect was disturbed and my beliefs were rattled and shaken in this noggin of mine, my true nature was waking up. So what I just realized now is my intellect was grumpy. That's what was grumpy. My true nature, via the feeling, was thinking, cool. I like those shoes too. Cool. So there's this dichotomy, how can this be? It's such an opposite way of learning. So Sid would come to dinner, and I would find, despite myself, asking him a question. And to my consternation, he would respond. It was like I was asking, but don't tell me. And so he would respond, and then I'd get upset, and I'd say, I asked you, not to talk to me about this. But he'd say, well, dearie, you asked me a question, and I'm just responding to your question. So back and forth, back and forth. I won't talk about that too long, because I just really want to make the point that we're so grateful you're here to share this journey with us, and to hear the story of Sydney Banks. Because oftentimes people will say to us, why do you make a point of talking about Sid so much? Why don't you just talk about the principles? Because the principles are the message. And that's true. The principles are the message. And Sid would be the first to say it, as he did countless times in his public talks and so on. But at the same time, what happened to Sid. This spontaneous, profound insight that happened to the man, unbidden. He didn't seek it. He had no idea it existed. He didn't read philosophy books. He was minimally educated. He wasn't looking for anything. I'll repeat that. He wasn't looking for anything. And yet, there it was. This spontaneous insight, the secret to life. So that's why we really make a point in this school to help preserve his legacy, is here's the message, and here's the man that uncovered that message, and you bring the both together and you see they're one. You can't divorce them. And Chip and I and Ken and Jan and George and Linda and everybody that's sitting here to be able to contribute and help preserve that duality that is actually one. Because I know as more and more new people come and learn from teachers that didn't have the privilege of learning from Sid, as you know, many of the pioneers that are actively sharing this, the story of Sid gets a little lost, and they're not sure, what about Sid? Who was he, and how did he come? How did he become involved in this? You know, they don't understand that were it not for Sid and what he uncovered, we wouldn't be sitting here. We absolutely wouldn't be sitting here. And so just to kind of wrap up this story, to share the power of the feeling and the essence of the feeling that is the teacher, without words, is that the last time I thought I would see Sid was when he drove up our driveway, and I was in the most turmoil of my life up to that point. And I thought, oh dear, you know, look who's coming up the driveway, this friend. I just don't think I can take it. You know, I just don't think I can take any more positivity in my life. It's so disturbing. I mean, positivity is disturbing. How can that be? But that's where I was. That's exactly how I felt. I cannot take any more positivity. It's disrupting my life. And so I hid in the bathroom, which increasingly is, as I continue to tell this story all these years. And by the way, Sid loved this story. Yeah. Whenever he would ask me to talk at a conference that he gave, he would say, Elsie, you know, tell that story. Tell that story. Because I don't think you've heard many stories. You've heard Chip and Jan's story. You've heard George and Linda's story, and countless others here in the audience who were sort of the original students of Sydney Banks. You've heard powerful stories wherever you've gone. Your own stories are powerful, the changes in your life. I can see by the fact that I didn't even recognize some of you. You've changed so much. But I just, it's like, what do I do? You know, where do I go? So I hid in the bathroom, and I'm like this, waiting. I hear the door open, and they call out, and I wait. Go, please, just go. And then I hear the door close, and I'm out of that bathroom like a shot. Like something inside knew this is your last chance, is what I felt. This is your last chance. I went to the door and beckoned them back in. And to my dismay, they came back in. It's like, again, you know, tell me, don't tell me. Tell me, don't tell me. Just the dichotomy of that, of the true nature wanting to expand and grow and live and claim my spiritual inheritance, and my intellect saying, oh, this is disturbing all my beliefs, all my life, all my beliefs. So, as I say, to my dismay, they came back in, but in my angst, I just couldn't even invite them to sit down. We're standing in the kitchen, and Sid said what I considered were the final words, and that my friendship now was at an end with this man. And he said to me, "You'll be okay, dearie. You'll be okay, and you have God within you, as does everybody in this world." Now, those are really beautiful words, aren't they? You know, I mean, they're beautiful words. They're reassuring, they're comforting now. But at that time, it just exploded inside of me, and I almost pushed them out the door. And Sid, again, you know, with such kindness and understanding, left. But he knew something had happened to me. Well, you could have fooled me, because I just was in this terrible turmoil, and called a mutual friend and ranted and raved and so on. But something happened to me, and again, when I tell this story, it's so hopeful to me, even now, because in the midst of my turmoil and angst, a moment of lucidity occurred. And despite angst and anger, insight occurred in that moment of lucidity. That's all it took. A moment of lucidity, a moment of clarity, and I heard something that absolutely transformed my life and has never stopped. I heard the principle of thought, and even more than that, I felt it. I felt it to the core of my being, the principle of thought, that I'm the creator of my world. I'm the creator of this bubble of reality that I live in. And I was empowered by that. And that was it, the principle of thought, the power of thought. It liberated me from my beliefs, from my negativity. And you've heard Sid talk on his tapes about you'll be in a whole new world. An insight will take you into a whole new world. In that moment, I was in a whole new world. I was in a world of hope, of wonder, of relief, of peace, overwhelming relief. And I wept because I felt alive. I felt alive for the first time in my life. And I see again in hindsight that the feeling I gained when I was in Sid's presence of mental health, and as I said earlier, that was really my true nature, I realize now, joining Sid's true nature, you know, being drawn out by Sid's wisdom, by his mental health. That's what we offer to the world by just living. And that's what this school is about, is to help us understand more fully how to live it. Not to be concerned about how will I apply it, how will I help others. You'll find your way, as we did, and as George and Linda did. They found their way on how to be practitioners and psychologists and therapists. Chip and Jan and Ken and I, we found our way on how to work in business and in other areas, you know, venues in this world. You find that you're your best teacher, you're your best trainer in this invisible message that our true nature brings out via a feeling. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some incredible trainings offered in the world today. There are. And I see more and more in my recent travels, having had the honor to present at the Tikkun conference and see these incredible presenters who have grown by leaps and bounds in the years since I last saw them, and who offer wonderful training programs. But I've seen that they've evolved spiritually, that as they've honored the miracle that happened to Sid, as they've honored more fully the spiritual nature of the three principles, and as they've honored more fully their own spiritual nature, it's elevated everything that's being done. Yeah. So I really want you to hear that I'm not saying don't go to trainings. I'm just saying that also understand that the best trainer is you. So there.